Hi, welcome to this video on factorising of quadratics. Please pause the video now and copy down the important notes here. So just the quadratic expression, general formula for a quadratic expression. I'll explain what this means in a moment, and then these 2 points there. Once you've done that, then you can focus on the maths and we can make some progress. Okay, so in my previous video, we talked about expanding double brackets. We know that if I wanted to get a quadratic, which is in the general formula of a number x squared plus a number x plus another number, I can start with two brackets, and we end up by, or we begin by multiplying across both brackets. So we ensure that every term in the bracket is multiplied by every term in the second bracket. So every one in the first multiplied by every one in the second. Doesn't matter what method you use, but if I bring x times x, I get x squared. If I do j times q, I end up with jq. If I do j times x, I end up with jx. And if I do x times q, I end up with qx. Okay, so if I write that out here, I can say I get x squared plus jx plus qx plus jq. Now I put in j and q here so I can represent any number, right? Because what I want to do is I want to work out how to factorize, which is essentially going backwards. So if I had something like x squared plus 10x plus 9, and I was asked to factorize that, what I'm actually being asked to do is to put in brackets. It's kind of like expanding brackets, but where they give you the answer first. They say, right, well, here's the answer. What is the question? What brackets did this come from? And it's a little bit tricky because we've got a number of factors involved here. I've got to try and multiply these numbers together here to get my 9 value. Right? So let's say I had something like x plus 3, x plus 4. If I wanted to get the number at the end here, I would multiply my two numbers together. But at the same time, these numbers are going to have an effect on my x value. So if I had 3x and 4x, whatever these numbers are going to have an effect on that. So it's difficult for me to do. It's a lot more complicated than if I just had, say, I had to factorize out x. So we're trying to work out a way that I can do this generically, with any number. So what I've done is I've got j and I've got q, and we've just expanded it normally. I'm going to take this a step further, and you'll notice that within jx and qx, I've got a common factor of x. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take that out. So I'm going to say, I'm going to take out x. I'm just left with j plus q. And on the outside, I'm just going to leave j and q. So what you'll notice here is that if I refer back to my standard expression for quadratics, my b value is represented by j and q added together. I'm just going to erase these lines here, make things a little bit more clear. Right? So the number in front of x is represented by when I add these two numbers together. Whereas my number at the end, my c value, or it could be 9 in this case, is represented by these two numbers in the brackets multiplied together. So the product of these two brackets will give me my c value. The product of these two numbers will give me my c value, and the sum of these two numbers will give me my 10, my x value, my b value. So that gives us a starting point, because I know what numbers multiply together to give me 9. I know the factors of 9, and I can write those out. So I've got 1, 9, and 3. Those are the factors of 9. 1 times 9 will give me 9, and 3 times 3 will give me 9. So now I've got to think, right, well, I know that if I multiply these two together, or I had 2 3's, I would get 9. I now need to think, the sum of these two numbers needs to get me 10. So obviously 3 times, if I put 3 in here, 3 plus 3 isn't going to give me 10, right? So I have to put in 1 and 9, because 1 plus 9 is going to give me 10. And we'll see when I expand this out, if I put x and x here, I know that's going to be x and x, because if I use my smiley face method on this, x times x, that's going to give me x squared. 1 times 9, that's going to give me 9. And here's the test. 1 times x, that's going to give me x. And 9 times x, that's going to give me 9x. If I bring these together, x plus 9x, that gives me 10x. Okay, so that was just one to kind of experiment with. Let's see if we can apply this method a little bit quicker and make it a little bit more smooth. So, next one, let's have x squared plus 15x plus 50. X squared plus 15x plus 50. Right. Again, I know that it's going to come out into two brackets. I know that I'm going to have an x value here and an x value here, because that's the only way I can get out x squared when I do x times x. And now I need to think, well, what are the factor pairs of 50? So I start writing down 1. So 1 and 50, 2 and 25, 3 doesn't go, 4 doesn't go, 5 goes, 5 and 10, 6 doesn't, 7, no, 8, no, 9, no, and 10, we're back at the 10. Alright, so there are our 6 factors of 50. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of getting used to. If you know your times tables well, this is really standing in good stead. But now we need to kind of think, alright, well, I know that if I multiplied any of these together, any of these pairings together, I would get 50 out. I now need to think, how can I add them together to get 15? And obviously the only ones that will work with them are 5 and 10. So that's going to be 5, and that's going to be 10. And now I need to think, well, I need to get out positive 15, so they both have to be positive. And let's double check ourselves. So 5 times 10, that gives me 50. X times x, that gives me x squared. That's going to give me 5x. That's going to give me 10x. 5x and 10x, 15x. Okay, good. Let's make this a little bit more challenging. Just a little bit. Right, so on the next one, we'll have x squared minus now. X squared minus 11x plus 24. Right. Now I need to think, it's pretty much the same thing, but now I need to think, when I start doing my sum of j and q, I need to think, what is going to get me negative 11? Okay, so if I think of my factors of 24, I've got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Right, so there they are. There are my factors of 24. Now up to this point, what I've left out is the fact that, yes, I can multiply 2 and 12 to get 24, but I can also do minus 2 times minus 12, or negative 2 times negative 12, because we know a negative times a negative is positive. That's going to get me 24. And I'm going to use this to my advantage now. I'm going to use this knowledge, because I know that if I want to get a plus here, I can either have 2 positive numbers or I can have 2 negative numbers. And I know that I need to get a negative 11, so I know that one of my numbers has to be a negative, if not both of them have to be negative. So let's have a look here. If I went 2 plus 12, that's going to give me 14. That's not really going to work. However, if we note here, I've got 3 and 8. 3 plus 8 is going to give me 11, which is obviously not what I want. I want negative 11. However, if I had a negative 3 and a negative 8 in my brackets, negative 3 plus negative 8, that's going to get me negative 11, which is a win. That's what we want. And negative 3 times negative 8 is going to give me a positive 24, which is exactly what I want. And obviously x times x gives me x squared. I'm sorry, that was meant to be x squared right from the beginning. Right. So when we've got a positive number here, just remember that I'm going to include I need to include my negatives, and a big hint for that will be that sign there is negative. I need to look, how can I get a negative out of those? Right, let's try another one. Okay, so last one we'll have x squared plus 5x minus 14. X squared plus 5x minus 14. Alright, now, same process, however, I've got a negative 14 now. Now this negative 14 kind of throws a bit of a curveball, because the way I get a negative out, obviously remember I had multiplied j and q to get, jq to get my c value. One of these, j and q, has to be negative. Because I can either get a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive to give me my negative value of C. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that. But other than that, the process is exactly the same. 1, 14, 7, and 2. 2 and 7. Go up numerically, 2 and 7. So I now need to be thinking, how can I combine these in some way? How can I add them in order to get 5? I know that one of them is going to be negative. So if I look at this, if I have a negative 2 and a positive 7, that is going to give me my positive 5 out there, which is what I want. So let's have a look here. If we put that into our brackets, we have x and x, and then negative 2 and positive 7 out at the moment. And if I multiply out, that gives you my x squared, that gives you my negative 14, because that's a negative 2. Brilliant. Minus 2x plus 7. And I combine those two, end up with my 5x. Alright. That is it for our warming up. I'm going to give you 3 questions to have a go at home. Pause the video now, and then we can go through them together in a moment. Right, so assuming you've done that, answers for question A up here. Right, you just had to list out the products of, the factors of 56, and you would have found that 8 and 7 were the ones that were close enough to get me to 1, because remember in front of x is a 1. So I also knew that because that was a minus, one of them had to be positive, one of them had to be negative, and I know that if that was a negative 8, and that's a positive 7, that's the way I could get negative 1 out there. If I expand these out, I get negative 8x plus 7x, which would give me my negative x there. Okay, at the bottom here, we have x minus 3, x plus 8, and again, same process, or same issue. I had this negative 24, and so the products of that would be 3 and 8. Sorry, the factors of that would be 3 and 8. One of them had to be negative in order for me to get my 5 out of that. So that has been minus 3 and plus 8. I know these can get quite difficult, but they do get easier the more of them that you do. You start to just see patterns, and you start to be able to solve them almost in your head. So be tenacious, keep doing it. I promise you it does get easier. For this one, both of these brackets have a negative term in them, and I knew that was quite a big hint there because that was a negative 18. Think of my factors of 72, and we could have listed them, but 6 and 12 combined somehow to get me 18. But I wanted it to be a negative 18, so they both had to be negatives. All right, and if I expand this, negative 12 times negative 6, I get positive 72, and negative 6x, negative 12x combined to give me my negative 18x. All right, hope that was informative. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.